going through the trauma that we went through with Theo's illness and his death has humbled me, has made me a little softer to clients' issues, because you always want them to feel their problem is my problem. I hear you. I know what you mean. I want to do what I can to help you. You always want to make sure the clients feel you have their back. It was very hard to deal with Theo's passing and his illness, and having a law practice where I felt I could still do good things was helpful, I think, for me to keep my sanity.
Howdy, and welcome to the show. Cooper's Code focuses on legal issues and notable practitioners, distilling wisdom so we all achieve the best results for our clients. I'm Miles Cooper, and I'm thrilled to share part 3 of this conversation with John Feeder. As you're working on cases or thinking about ways to help communicate, are there any tools, any individuals that have come up for you that you feel are helpful in that? Robert
Bailey wrote a great book that I still refer to all the time called Show the Story. And Confucius basically had a saying from 500 BC, tell me and I will forget, show me and I may remember, but if it involves me, I'll never forget it. And the point is, you want to tell them, you want to show them, but you have to find a way to motivate them into thinking their verdict on this case will make their lives better and their family safer. You know, the old reptile theory.
Yes.
So going to lectures has been really helpful for me. Like I first heard Rodney Jew, who's a jury consultant, talk about a problem that developed during World War II that an engineer named Abraham Wald, W-A-L-D, helped correct. The United States was looking at suffering tremendous casualties of their bombers in Europe in the early part of the 40s.
Was this the B-24?
Yes.
Okay.
And so they looked at all the planes that came back and they analyzed where the bullet holes were on these planes. And there was a tremendous amount of bullet holes in the wings and in the fuselage. And the initial design was, well, we better get a lot more armor on those areas, because look, all these bullets are hitting this part of the plane. Now, if you heavily armor the plane, it's going to make it heavier too. So there's a real trade-off, because it may not survive the shelling if it's too slow. But Abraham Wald said, we shouldn't be looking at the planes that came back because they survived. It's the planes that crashed, the ones that had damage to their engine and their fuel tank. Those are the ones that's where we need to put the armor.
Interesting.
Because these planes survived.
Yeah.
And I think we as lawyers, we tend to be like overly reliant on what we've done in the past. And we'll look at what we think might be a thorough investigation report done, whether it's the MATE team or CHP or, some fire department, and think they studied it. But many of our cases have been where the CHP, the police, they just got it wrong. And so I think you look outside the box. One of the cases, I can't remember if you worked on this case with me. I had a family where a bicyclist, 30-year-old nurse, was struck and killed by a truck out by Highway 280, where a lot of the bike routes are right by the freeway entrance and exits in the South Bay. And the police report was all over the decedent, blaming the bicyclist for pulling out right in front of the vehicle that ended up hitting her and passing the vehicle that ended up killing her. So we had a case in which the CHP found all the fault of the accident was on the bicyclist, this young woman. And by thinking outside the box, we arranged an expert inspection of the truck. And so we had a bunch of truck experts, and we actually tested the truck and brought it up to different speeds and then slammed on the brakes. The CHP report had no information whatsoever about any physical evidence from skid marks. But the good experts that we hired, the Mark Shaddicks of the world, found it. And we were able, by linking up the testing we did on the actual truck, equipped with a big, huge trailer with a rig, we were able to show that the speed that the truck was going at impact meant that it had gone right through the stop sign. And if we just looked at the police report, we would not have seen it. But I had my expert go out there right away before the CHP report was even available. And the CHP report didn't mention it, but some of the photographs had those skid marks very faint. And we were able to get a big, policy limit settlement by proving that what the truck driver had testified to was just physically impossible. Looking deeper than the average bear is critically important. If you're going to protect a client, if you're going to take the case, you have to do it right. And that means spending the money to hire the best experts you can find to give you the honest opinion as to whether it's meritorious or not. So if it's a medical malpractice case, we're not getting an expert who's been advertising on TV that he does expert services. We're checking colleagues to look somebody top-notch, a man or woman who's credible and honest, and will give us a fair evaluation without bias. We get cynical, I think, because we depose so many doctors who have an axe to grind. They're hired by the insurance company. But I think if it's a medical malpractice case, and most other cases, you need to find somebody who's taking a scientific approach. And David Ball has some excellent articles about that in front of a jury. You want to show how an expert investigates the cause of an incident, whether it's malpractice or elder abuse or a vehicle accident, and show these are the steps that you must take to evaluate it fairly. And you can't have a bias in favor of one side or the other. You have to look at it scientifically. And I think, that's a great way to present evidence that's way more persuasive than just somebody who's a hired gun that'll say whatever you want that person to say.
How did you manage to get the truck to be able to do that kind of testing?
We just filed a request to produce the truck. And we hired, I think it was Bill Jones, I forget who it was, to be the truck driver. And we took it off-road. It wasn't at the accident scene. And they consented. I think that maybe they thought the case was doubtful liability. I can't remember if you were with us when we had the Tipton case where we had Paul Kafitz on a wrongful death case, brain injury case down in Bakersfield. 2 Marines heading back to the military base were broadsided by a truck. And we thought the truck had violated their right of way and our clients were going really fast. We spent maybe $50,000 or $60,000. We got a permit to close the freeway, Highway 58, from the state of California. It was against a private trucking company. We went back to Florida to inspect the truck. And while we were there, all of us, this team of experts, the fog rolled in and there was not one shot we could use of video.
Oh, wow.
So there was like $60,000 down the drain. Another plaintiff lawyer tried the wrongful death case, which was defensed, but we ended up getting a great settlement for our client because I thought we were able to demonstrate through other means that the trucker was not properly attentive. But I do think hiring the right experts and putting on a show, it's got to, like we know, it's got to be visual, it's got to be captivating, and it's got to resonate with the jury. There has to be something in it for them. They have to be thinking they're making the community safer.
I want to pivot a bit and touch on life challenges. What I mean here is you and your family went through a terrible tragedy. And
yes,
I'm asking this from the perspective of a practitioner and in terms of how you were able to continue with your practice and how that has informed your engagements with your clients being on the awful side of things. And with that, do you mind telling people what you went through?
No, I don't mind telling people. My grandson, Theo, was born about 5 years ago, his mom and dad lived in Glendale. So Sue and I, my wife, we bought a house in Glendale when he was born so we could be hands-on grandparents. And I didn't have any real intention of spending a ton of time down there, but I wanted to be close to him. I wanted to help raise him. And then my daughter had her second child, a baby girl, when little Theo was 3 years and 3 months. She had another child. And one day, he slurred his speech and his balance was off. And he went to the emergency room in Southern California. They took a blood test, said everything looks fine. They had him walk up and down. And they said, I think he's ready to be discharged. And fortunately, my daughter thought a CT scan would be a good idea because he wasn't quite himself. And it ended up revealing a massive, deadly brain tumor that would kill him. And when the MRI came back, he was 3 years and 3 months, and they said it's essentially a death sentence. There's no hope for survival. He had DIPG, diffuse intrinsic ponzioglioma. So it's right on the brainstem, and it's super adherent, and you can't operate. And so, little Theo went to the Children's Hospital in LA for 6 weeks, 5 days a week under general anesthesia for radiation to shrink the tumor to try to give him a little bit of quality of life. Because 2 days after he was diagnosed, he could not walk, could not talk. And this was a kid who was running around the day before. So it was brutal. We were devastated. I had really hoped that he would remember me when he was starting high school. And, I had planned to give him this watch. The watch that I'm wearing now is a watch that he loved and would play with. And, I'd planned to give that to him when he turned a teenager. And little Theo was just, happy, energetic little boy. And so when he was diagnosed, my wife and I agreed that we would bring his baby sister to live with us. We'd take care of little Remy, who was only 5 months old, as Theo fought for his life over the next 9 months. And the doctors thought it might just be 3 months. So it was devastating and life-changing. It was fortunate for me that I was able to have a practice to lose myself in, because practicing law, as unpredictable as it is some days, is much more predictable than dealing with a health problem. And I know you went through hell with Dylan, and you and Marianne were there every step of the way.
Yeah.
And I know it tortured you as Theo's illness tortured us. And I've always taken, I think, a lot and appreciated my clients' resilience and fortitude when they've gone through these horrible things. I've always thought that taught me things and helped make me grateful. But dealing with grief and tragedy as we deal with as plaintiff lawyers was of no comfort to me when Theo's diagnosis. I was besides myself and wanted to do everything to make that his remaining days as sweet as possible. But I think it might have helped me be a little softer and maybe a little bit more empathetic with clients now.
And what do you mean by that?
Knock on wood, I lost my dad when he was in his mid-80s in 2008. But that's kind of a circle of life thing. And my mom died 8 months after Theo died, but she was 90 and had a great life. And that was, again, circle of life. It was her time. And so I wasn't devastated like when you hear a 3-year-old's got a brain tumor that's inoperable. But I think, seize the day, carpe diem. It just makes every day more precious. Little Remy's been at our house in San Rafael for the last 2 weeks. She and her family came up to stay with us after the LA fires. And it's been fantastic to see this little girl and hear her talking sweetly. And I'm her poppy. And, I love that. But I think having the health problem, going through this terrible ordeal was a good reminder that nothing's guaranteed.
Yeah.
nobody has control over the future. You can make your best plans, but shit can hit the fan in a second. And we know that intuitively from the work that we do, where wonderful people lose their lives. And that book written by the Rabbi Kirshner that I read after Theo's illness is not why bad things happen to good people. It's when, because there is no why that you can answer. You can't ever say, well, it's God's will. I remember I had a rape case where the owner of the apartment building said it was an act of God that your client was raped that night.
For those who aren't listening, the look on my face was a perplexed look.
Yeah. This was a rich real estate developer in New York. I was back there for deposition. This is years ago, that it was a negligent security case. And he said that the rape, what he was trying to say was how unforeseeable it was. It was an act of God. But I think going through the trauma that we went through with Theo's illness and his death has humbled me, has made me a little softer to clients' issues, because you always want them to feel their problem is my problem. I hear you. I know what you mean. I want to do what I can to help you. You always want to make sure the clients feel you have their back. And I think some people would say it made them maybe harder. I know my wife was angry. And there's this psychological, the just world phenomena, where sometimes when something terrible happens, the experts that we've worked with has said that the client's view that the world is just, the good are rewarded, is forever shattered. I didn't really have a just world concept. I know that terrible things happen to great people, but it was very hard to deal with Theo's passing and his illness, and having a law practice where I felt I could still do good things was helpful, I think, for me to keep my sanity. But I withdrew from, I wasn't comfortable at cocktail parties. Hey, how are your cases coming? I didn't want to bullshit about trivia stuff. I was mourning. I was taking care of my family and my clients, and I wasn't really networking. I kind of just came out of the shell about a year later. I think I saw you at the CIOC conference, and we had a great talk.
Yeah. The reentry can be challenging.
Yeah. Because hey, how was your summer? How have you been? It's kind of like when they know you've had a health challenge like Dylan had, and you guys having a 9-week ordeal at Stanford Hospital, 5 weeks in the ICU and 4 weeks in the main ward. That had to be torture. I know it was. But you were there every step of the way for this little girl who's flourishing. And your story has a happy ending, and Theo's didn't. And that's something that I can't help but thinking about every day. I don't wear jewelry, but I have this little gold bracelet that my wife gave me that says Theodore and Poppy, and it has the date of his birth on it. And, he's always on my mind. So when I've learned that you need to address the elephant in the room. So if my client or somebody I know has gone through something terrible, I don't just say, hey, how you doing? What's up? You have to, I think, use the name of the person that they've lost. You have to speak as kindly as you can, realistically, of them. And you have to try to figure out what their needs are. For years, I've been telling my clients who have suffered the wrongful death of their spouse, don't wait around to be called, make the phone calls, tell your family, tell your friends what you need. And I think that's still good advice. But it's challenging because sometimes your family and friends think, oh, I don't want to bring it up because maybe John will think, maybe it's a bummer to think about losing Theo. But as you know, when you have a health problem, for people you love, it's on your mind constantly. So I appreciate when people will ask my daughter and her husband or Sue and I, how are you doing? It's not like the pain is over just because the person's passed.
If you're enjoying what we're doing here with Cooper's Code, please help us extend our reach by giving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and consider sharing an episode with a friend. Additionally, we want to know who you want to hear on the show. Have an interview suggestion? Email us at podcast@coopers.law. I want to make sure that our listeners are aware of your daughter and son-in-law's podcast that just came out. I listened to it yesterday morning, episode 1, and it's about their journey. And as awful as that story may sound, when I said to one or two people, you really need to listen to this, the response was, "Oh, I don't want to hear about that. That's an awful experience.
Too painful."
And the reason I bring it forward, and it is so beautiful, powerful. And there are, for me, who went through part of that journey, there's certainly parts that are hard. But I was really floored by just how amazing that was. And I want to make sure that people are aware of it. So do you want to tell people about it?
Yes, it just made its debut on Saturday, which was February 1st. That was the date of Theo's diagnosis with this incurable brain cancer called DIPG. And my wife and I and my family have been raising money for, I think it's called Chad Tough, and it's to raise money for pediatric brain cancer, because there's not that much research done on pediatric brain cancer. And there's bound to be a solution that's found out there, whether it's medication or some type of surgery. The podcast is called Worst Club Ever. And Allie, my daughter, who's a therapist and a singer, when Theo was diagnosed, she looked all around for books or guidance as to how to handle it and what to say later to the surviving sibling of Theo, Remy, what to say to her daughter. And her podcast is intended to help bereaved parents, but also the people that care for them. Like, for example, don't ignore the reality. Say, "How are you doing? I know you went through hell. How are you doing?" So it's called Worst Club Ever. It's available on Apple. It's free, of course. And there's some hard moments as she talks about her grief, the challenges she had with her husband, because her husband, Mike, who I adore, he had 8 books on his nightstand, like how to beat cancer, using, a no sugar diet, or using a keto diet. So he was doing everything he could to figure out a way to save lives. We were on the phones at 5 a.m. talking to a doctor in Germany. I mean, he talked to everybody at UCSF, Stanford, all of the, Mayo Clinic, and then overseas. And he had experimental medications flown out from Germany, from a lab that was trying to develop a medication that might be effective from DIPG. And they still haven't found a cure. And we're hoping the podcast is helpful to parents and grandparents and friends of people that have had a horrible health problem.
I take it beyond that. I think it is a beautiful story, and it is so well done. And I've really enjoyed it so far.
Thank you. The first 3 episodes will be about Theo's story. And then the rest will be interviews with psychiatrists, with parents, with as many people who have written books about grief and how to get past it, how to deal with it. I shouldn't ever use the word get past it. You don't get past it. You just try to do your best to live your best life. And right before Theo lost consciousness, he told Allie, "Don't cry, Mama. I want you to be happy." And so all of us want to live our best lives, and we have to cope with whatever challenges we're having. And I think there's this defensive attribution doctrine.
Yes.
Where people hear about something terrible happening, and for their own peace of mind, they want to be able to say, well, they must have deserved it. And, it doesn't really apply to something like this, but we know from our cases that the sequencing of the information that we give out is critically important. Like the Glaza case that you and I worked on, where we had a gentleman killed, struck by a Muni bus when he walked in back of a parked Muni bus jaywalking. Police report was all against us. And if you just told the story, the light was green, but he chose to walk behind a parked bus right in front of an oncoming bus, it'd be a defense verdict. But then when we learned the operator was violating the rules, eating a a Slim Fast candy bar and she was drinking coffee. And then when you sequence it and show that it was her distraction that probably caused her to hit the accelerator pedal as hard as she could when she saw the pedestrian trying to stop her bus instead of hitting the brake.
Yeah. I just want to thank you for being willing to share that very personal story of Theo and your family and how it's informed how you work in the law.
You're welcome. It's a tough story.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've cried often in the last year and a half. I think we were talking at the CIOC convention. I was kind of the syringe guy. I would go over to Allie and Mike's every night, and he'd be getting his food and medicine through either an NG tube or a tube through his stomach. And so they would go through like 40 syringes a day. There were no needles, but it would hook up.
Yeah.
And I think I was telling you that I wish I was still able to wash those syringes, and those services are no longer needed.
Yeah.
It's hard.
John, I've enjoyed our conversation. At this point, I want to ask if there's anything else. It's a tough segue after that, and I don't know that there's any way to soften it. But I want to ask you if there's anything else that comes to mind for you in terms of things that you feel would be helpful for our listeners.
Yes, I one of the things that I would like to say is, when you're a young lawyer, you don't know if there's a path forward, and you don't know what their career is going to look like. But I would say to any man or woman listening that, approach your career with a passion and a dedication to getting it done right. And think of this as an incredible opportunity to stand up and walk for those that cannot walk, and to speak for those that cannot speak. And it's the opportunity of a lifetime, I think, to do good for people. And it doesn't matter, how you start or where you graduated in law school. If you're willing to work hard and creatively and passionately, the clients will see that, and you'll be doing good work. And you might be working for somebody who's old school, but you have plenty of friends and colleagues who can give you the pats on the back that you need to develop your career. And I'd say go to as many lectures and read as many books as you can, because one of the things I love about it, after I've been doing this for 47 years, since 1978, is I learn, whether it's reading your column last month or going to a lecture, there's always a tidbit that I take from everything that I read about. And the law is always changing. And it's never boring. If you think the case is boring, send it to somebody else. So, I think my lucky stars that I was able to find a career that suited my goals and suited my emotional needs. And I think it's helpful if you can find a partner who understands the kind of commitment that takes, because you can't phone this job in. You can't do things rotely, at least if you want to do a great job. And that means taking the concerns your client has to heart and figuring out a way to create a new life. And the hug at the end of the case from the client, thank you for changing my life for the better, it's just like, that's what it's all about. And the other thing is, don't be afraid to call lawyers you have not met to get their input on your case. Maybe you need an expert. Maybe you're looking for a trial brief. I think it was JFK that said a high tide floats all boats, but there's these great listservs that CAOC has and SFTLA has. But people like you and me and so many of the other listeners that and people you've interviewed, they're happy to give you free advice to help you become the best lawyer you can be. So I'd say, go for the gusto, and don't just go into corporate work defending the big corporations when they get sued. Make a difference and help the little guy.
Very well said. With your permission, since you were the one who brought up Karen Jo Koonen's piece, I haven't done this with a guest before, but it seems very fitting, as we've talked a bit about cancer in this, and to honor Karen Jo Koonen's memory, to ask you, What are the 5 things that you're proudest of?
That's a great question. And it's embarrassing how little I've thought about that. I think one of the things that I'm proudest of is that I take my job very seriously, but I don't take myself seriously. And I'm not afraid to laugh and to have fun and to enjoy my friends and my family when I'm not working. And my dad was in real estate in San Francisco, and he had 4 kids. I was the oldest. When he came home every night during the business week, we could tell if he had a good day or a bad day because it was affecting his mood. And that's one of the pacts I made to myself when I got home from work. No matter how my day had gone, I would be the same dad. And so my love for music and rock and roll would soothe me if I had a tough day on that 40-minute drive from San Francisco to San Rafael. And when I got home, I was thrilled to be with the kids, and I was able to get tremendous joy out of reading them stories, giving them a bath, hanging out at the dinner table with them, and just talking. So I'm proud that I was able to be there for my kids. That's one of the reasons I postponed my CAOC presidency. I wanted to wait until Matthew, my youngest, was out of high school. So I was able to go to his tennis tournaments when he was competing in tennis. And I was able to coach some of his baseball teams and be involved in supporting both Allie and Davey. So I guess I'm proud that I'm not exactly like my dad in that way, because as wonderful as a father he was, I don't think he realized how his mood was transparent. I think I'm proud that I think I'm tenacious about my cases, and I care for what happens to my families that I work with. And I'm proud that, I do my best to mentor young lawyers and to encourage them rather than put up a roadblock. I'd like to say that I'm giving them a handshake forward, or, they can grab my hand and I'm happy to hold them. I guess I'm proud that I have given back to my legal community, whether it's SFTLA or CAOC. I've done a lot of free lectures over the years, trying to teach others trial techniques that I've learned and that I think work. How about if I turn the question to you? Can I be the interviewer?
When you have a podcast.
That's a good answer. Surprised me.
It's deflection.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Like the persistent lawyer that I try to be. What about if you gave me 4 things that you're most proud of, or 3 things?
I am proud of the passion that I put into the work that I do. I am proud of how I have strived to learn to live in the moment and how I am continuing to work on that. I am proud of the father that I am and the husband that I am. And I am thankful for people like you and Rich Schoenberger and others who have shown the way on how you can be a good father and a good trial lawyer.
Well, that's very well said. And you're a great father and you're a great trial lawyer. And I wish we were still working together. That is one of my regrets, because I loved working with you, and I think you're an amazing lawyer.
Likewise, John, I really enjoyed working cases with you. So thank you very much for being here, John.
Great to talk to you, as always.
And thank you for listening today. Please email us at podcast@coopers.law with questions, comments, feedback, and suggestions for who we should have on the show. Like what you heard? Share us with a colleague and leave us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. To all of you doing justice out there, happy hunting.